Hello, this is Domenico with Easynomics, and we're going to practice calculating comparative advantage by seeing which nation has the lower opportunity cost. There was a previous video introducing this topic where I discussed Leo Messi, the football player, versus myself, and who should play football, who should mow the lawn, and we were calculating opportunity cost. And so this is a continuation. It'll probably be a series of videos uh, providing different examples where we're calculating the comparative advantage as could be seen on a paper 3 type of exam. So here we're going to use China versus the United States, two very large trading partners. And just to highlight a real world example, the United States, from their natural capital resources or land resources, has the ability to extract crude petroleum, and that makes up about 4.09% of US exports. With a portion of that, I'm going to assume, I haven't researched into this, but I'm going to assume that a portion of those exports of crude is going to China. And here we can see that with China, 12.9%, a significant portion of their total imports is crude, which really highlights their dependence on bringing in that type of energy for the motor of their industrial economy, running on that fossil fuel. So that shows a link between these two nations. Now, of course, China is also importing from nations in the Middle East and so on. But let's assume that a portion that's coming from the United States. And with the US, in terms of imports, we see that 3.44% of their total imports are computers. And in looking at China and their exports, about 5.48% of their exports are computers. And definitely we can assume that a portion of those exports are going to the United States, which is significantly importing a large quantity of computers, 3.44% of total imports being computers. So we're going to use that as our example. We're going to use crude petroleum versus computers. Now, obviously, here we have the data to show which country has the opportunity cost, but on a paper 3, you'd have to demonstrate it. And then on paper 3, they might give you the actual PPC curves. Here we have on the x-axis, we're measuring the units of computers, and on the on the y-axis, we're measuring the units of computers, and on the x-axis, we're measuring the units of crude petroleum, probably barrels of crude petroleum. And we have two production possibilities curve, assuming constant opportunity costs. The blue curve is PPC2, which is representing the United States, and the red curve, PPC1, representing China. And here we can see with China, by utilizing this matrix, and this is probably the best way to calculate opportunity costs, is to create this type of matrix where you have the two nations or firms or individuals on the left margin, and on the top, you're measuring the two goods that they can produce to see whether or not they can trade with each other based on the idea of comparative advantage. Now, a bit of review of comparative advantages. It's any nation or firm or individual that has the lower opportunity cost in the production of a particular good than the other nation, firm, or individual. Now, by just looking at this PPC curve, we can also visually see which country has the comparative advantage. When we look at China, if they allocate all of their resources, let's say, to, let me use this different color. Let's say they allocate all of their resources at point A towards the production of computers, they can produce 10 units. Or if they allocate all of their resources at point B, then they can produce 2 units of crude petroleum. In the case of the United States, if they were to allocate all of their resources at point C towards computers, they can produce 4 units. Or if they were able to allocate all of their resources at point D towards the production of crude petroleum, they produce 12 units of crude. And so this matrix illustrates that. For China, all of their resources applied towards crude petroleum, they can produce 2 units. Or if they applied or allocated all of their resources towards computers, 10 units. the United States, all of their resources allocated towards petroleum, 12 units, and if all of their resources were allocated towards computers, 4 units. Okay. Now, visually looking at this, we see that the China PPC curve is flatter towards the y-axis. So visually, that would mean that they have a comparative advantage or a lower opportunity cost in the production of computers. Whereas the United States has a PPC curve that is flatter towards the x-axis or crude petroleum, that would highlight that they would have the comparative advantage in that production. So visually we can see that, and then we can calculate the opportunity cost and double check if our calculations correspond with what we're seeing here visually. All right. So let's take a look. China, crude petroleum, United States crude petroleum. Who has the absolute advantage? We can see that the United States has the absolute advantage. They're able to produce more with the same quantity of resources than China in terms of petroleum. So they have the absolute advantage. That was discussed in a previous video. Whereas China is able to produce more computers than the United States with the same assumed quantity of resources. So they have the absolute advantage in the production of computers. So we notice here that since the two PPC curves intersect, that would mean that one nation has the absolute advantage in the production of one particular good, the United States the absolute advantage in the production of crude, whereas China has the absolute advantage in the production of computers. That's one thing that we notice when the two PPC curves intersect. One nation will have the absolute in one, and the other nation will have the absolute advantage in the other. So let's go ahead. Let's get to it. So, who has the lower opportunity cost in the production of crude? So we want to reduce this side down to 1. We want to see for each 1 unit of petroleum, what is the opportunity cost in terms of computers? So we're going to do this. 2 divided by 2 equals 1, and 10 divided by 2 equals 5, which means that for every time China produces 1 unit of petroleum, they lost the opportunity to produce 5 units of computers. Let's go ahead and do this for the United States. Let's reduce it down to 1. So 12 divided by 12 equals 1. 4 divided by 12 equals 0.3 repeating. What this tells us is that for every time the US produces 1 unit of petroleum, they lost the opportunity to generate 0.3 repeating units of computers. So in terms of crude, the United States has the lower opportunity cost. It's right here. That means that the US should be producing petroleum. All right, the US should be producing petroleum. Again, the US should specialize in petroleum because they have the lower opportunity cost. All right, every time they produce 1 petrol unit, they've lost opportunity to generate 0.3 repeating computers. So they're not really productive. China's able to produce more computers than the United States. US has the lower opportunity cost. They're not sacrificing that much. Can we demonstrate that China has a lower opportunity cost in terms of the production of computers? Let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to start again with the original data. Okay. So let's reduce this side down to 1 to see every time they generate 1 computer, what's the opportunity cost? So 10 divided by 10 is 1. And 4 divided by 4 is 1. Here we're going to divide 2 divided by 10 to see what the ratio is. And that's going to work out to 0.2. Every time China generates 1 computer, they lost opportunity to generate 0.2 units of petroleum. And for the United States, again, we're going to divide by 4 here, 12 divided by 4 to see what the ratio is. and that works out to 3. Every time the United States generates 1 unit of computers, they've lost opportunity to generate a lot of petroleum, 3 units. So China has the opportunity cost, the lower opportunity cost right here. China should focus on computers. Every time they generate 1 computer, they've only lost zero point 0.2 units of petroleum versus the United States significantly higher 3 units of petroleum. So China will specialize in computers. Here we can make a note. China should specialize in computers. Why? Because of that ratio. For every 1 computer that China produces, they've lost opportunity to generate 0.2 petrol units. They have the lower opportunity cost in this case. All right, so that's another practice of calculating this. And in other videos, I'm going to continue providing some examples to practice, and then also illustrate examples of what value or what ratio could the two nations trade in where they're both better off. And that will be discussed later on. But this is just another practice of calculating the lower opportunity cost for a potential kind of paper 3 type of exam. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. Don't forget to subscribe and to like. Thank you so much.